Hey guys, I'm doing this one from the road. It's about midnight here in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's really not a whole lot of traffic. I'm hoping it's good and quiet and not going to be annoying to you. I want to talk about writing as an act of faith, and I want to give you a very specific example of an experience I had years ago with an artist. This artist's name is Paul. I want to tell you a story he told me, or not so much even a story he told me, but it was quite a lesson that resonated with me because I was experiencing the same thing at the time. If you're new to the program, this is Mike Consol. Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. So this artist, whose name is Paul, he was or is, perhaps still is a member of the Charlotte Art League, as was my wife. And he used to say to my wife over and over again, he'd say, "You must paint every day. You must paint every day," because he knew that she was very hit and miss. He was in there every day and he was painting every day. And he was trying to encourage my wife, who really was not producing artwork of the quality that she was capable of. And he knew that. So he was telling her, "You must paint every day." Well, one day when I was there, he invited me over to his workspace. And what he said was, I start a canvas. I start applying paint to a canvas. I've got something in mind. And I think this is impossible. This is never going to work. This is never going to work. And he says, but I just keep at it. I just keep pushing paint around on that canvas, keep working at it. And it just resolves itself. It always does. It resolves itself. And I end up with a finished painting, something I'm happy with, something I intended to produce. And then he was pointing around his workspace from left to right. This was like a horseshoe because he had basically a square rectangular workspace. And he points over to the left and says, "These are my early paintings." As you go around, the ones as you move to the right are my newer paintings. And the ones to the left look pretty amateurish. And as you went around, you saw his artwork getting better and better and better. And if you went all the way to the right, you saw that he was really quite accomplished. And this is what he had been trying to communicate to my wife, is you must paint every day. And the fact that he was painting every day, you could see very clearly what came of that. But I want to get back to what he said about the canvas and how this will never work. It can't work. It's impossible. It's just a mess. Because I said to my wife afterward, what he said to me is exactly what I go through when I start a new chapter. I'll start a new chapter, and it's this cavalcade of words, but it's a mess. And I'm always thinking, this is not, it's not going to work. It's really just a mess. But I just keep at it. I keep pushing the words around. I add words, I subtract words, I rearrange words, I rethink things. And it resolves itself, just as Paul was saying. And you end up with a finished product, something that's far better than I ever thought it was going to be. And in some cases, work that I'm very happy with, work that I decide I'm going to retain this. This is going to be part of this novel because it's worthy. So I mentioned at the top, writing being an act of faith, and that's something that a writing instructor told me. I had this writing coach. She would gather a group together. People would read from their manuscripts, like a few pages. I think it's about 5 or 7 pages you would read, and then she would critique it, and so would the rest of the group. But she had said, in fact, I think one of the students said, and she concurred and repeated it. She said, "You are so right. Writing is an act of faith." It is absolutely an act of faith because you don't believe it's going to work. But you have to have faith in the fact that if you put the time in and the work in, it happens. In fact, Paul had said, I don't remember if I used this phrase or not, but he said, it's like magic. The magic happens as long as you keep at it. And I saw that in his work. I've seen it in my own work. And I love the phrase that writing is an act of faith because it really does summarize. I mean, maybe more than any other phrase, it really encapsulates what writing is really about. Certainly, fiction writing is that it truly is an act of faith. You really got to work at it, and you got to believe in it. I'm convinced that there's so many people who believe that they've got a book in them, and they sit down to write a novel, and the very first time they sit down to do it, they find it to be really difficult. They get that mess on the page or on the pages, and they just give up. They just think it's impossible. This is crazy. It's painful. Why am I going to do something that's painful? So I'm just going to give it up. But if they would keep at it, I mean, why do you put up with the pain? Well, the pain only lasts so long. The magic starts to happen. It's an exhilarating feeling when it starts to take shape, when it manifests in the way you intended it to manifest. It's a really exhilarating feeling. And future efforts to write aren't so much painful as they are frustrating, but you know that you know it's coming. You know what you're capable of. You know that the magic's going to happen as long as you stick with it. And as long as you are a student of writing and you learn the techniques necessary to make yourself a better writer. That is what it takes. But I've never forgotten what Paul said and what he showed me. It was amazing. It was amazing to look around his workspace like that and see his work improving. In a matter of just seconds, I just looked around and saw this enormous improvement. Now, this same thing happens with writing. We start off in the beginning with what is really poor stuff. And then we see how over time it's so much better. If we were to look back at our earliest writing and then compare it to our latest writing, hopefully what we would see, and certainly if we put the effort in and we worked at the craft, we would see notable improvement. And that kind of notable improvement is what keeps us going. It's what creates that forward motion and makes us believe in our own talent and that we can produce things that are worthwhile and that people actually want to read. And the thing to remember is that the writers that you respect the most, the writers who you love, go through the same thing. They write lousy first drafts and they have to go to work on that. I'll tell you a little story about that. Jennifer Egan wrote A Visit from the Goon Squad. I think I've got that title right. It's called The Visit from the Goon Squad. And it won the Pulitzer Prize. She actually got inventive and wrote it kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. The novel's written kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. Wins the Pulitzer Prize. I hear her interviewed on the radio. And they ask her about the writing process. And she says, well, I decide on the chapter I'm going to write. I sit down and I write it. And of course, it's terrible. That's all I have to tell you right there. There she is, a Pulitzer Prize winner, a seasoned veteran of writing. I mean, she's a young woman, still a young woman, relatively young woman. But the fact is that she's an accomplished author, and she says, I write it and it's terrible. And then what? she goes to work on it. She perseveres, just like Paul does with his canvas. So what's the bottom line here? Bottom line is I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to do two things. Number one, write every day. Just like Paul told my wife, you must paint every day. Write every day. It doesn't mean you can't miss a day once in a while, but when you're writing every day, you build momentum. Writing just once or twice a week, or when you're moved to write, that doesn't get you there. I've heard author after author say, you have to treat it like a job. You pick up the lunch bucket, you take it to the office, whatever that office might be, whether it's a writing room in your house or you go to Starbucks to do it, or you have some place in the park that you do it. It needs to be consistent. You need to put the time in, and it needs to be a very consistent practice. It's a practice of writing needs to be daily or damn near daily. And then secondly, remember that what you produce is going to be terrible on the first draft. But what also is going to happen if you persevere is that you are going to have the heady experience of having the magic happen, that you're going to see this manifestation happen with your copy right before your eyes. And it's going to exhilarate you. It's going to make you believe in yourself. And it's something that you remember for the next chapter that you write, or any piece that you write, that this is the way it works. And then finally, part and parcel of the other two things I just told you, is that, as that writing instructor told me, who I worked with briefly, writing is an act of faith. A lot of you are probably religious. A lot of you believe in faith. There's a lot of faith involved in Christianity, for example, and I'm sure in Islam as well. Well, there's a lot of faith involved in writing. Treat writing as an act of faith. Have faith in your ability to write. Have faith in your ability to write lousy and then turn it into something really good, worthwhile, and something that you eventually can take to an agent. And an agent can take to an editor. And hopefully it ends up on a bookstore shelf, or on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and so on. So one more time, writing is an act of faith. This is Mike Consol for Novelist Spotlight. And as always, I wish you the best of luck with your writing. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please click on the like button. Please subscribe if you don't already subscribe to the podcast. And you do me a favor if you share the link, either with this specific episode or with or for the podcast in general, with friends, colleagues, family members who you think would benefit, writers and readers who you think would benefit. Thank you for listening.